Good morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's Pediatric Grand Rounds, sponsored by the Office of Faculty Development. My name is Sylvia Choi, and together with my colleagues from the OFD, Doctors Erica Freeling, Rick Saladino, Mel Tavares, and Maren Luno, our mission is to support faculty development in a variety of domains. We are grateful that Dr. Dermody has reserved quarterly Grand Rounds for topics pertinent to faculty who are in academic medicine, and I am truly honored to introduce today's Grand Round speaker, our very own OFD colleague, Dr. Maren Luno. Dr. Luno is an associate professor in the Division of Pediatric Emergency Medicine and serves as an associate vice chair for faculty affairs in the Department of Pediatrics. After completing medical school at the University of Cincinnati and pediatric residency and emergency medicine fellowship at the Medical College of Wisconsin, Dr. Luno was recruited to UPMC Children's Hospital in 2015. Her academic interests include well-being of healthcare professionals and treatment of pediatric pain and anxiety in the hospital setting. Dr. Luno is truly a servant leader, always working on behalf of faculty through activities like chairing the Department of Pediatrics Wellbeing Task Force, creating the Faculty Resiliency Series and Thank You program, heading up the Maintenance of Certification portfolio, and leading the new Writing Intensive for Pediatric Academic Promotion. She's also a site PI for several multi-center trials in pediatric emergency medicine. Today, Dr. Luno brings her expertise to a different kind of platform, social media. While often associated with vacation photos and influencers, social media is increasingly recognized as a legitimate tool for education, advocacy, and professional development. The University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine now includes social media engagement as a publication equivalent scholarly product in its promotion process. We are grateful that Dr. Luno is going to present today's session on how to build your brand on social media. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Maren Luno.
Thank you, Sylvia, for that lovely introduction. I'm excited to be here speaking to you guys today on this topic. This topic came up in our Wellbeing Task Force meeting as something that faculty was interested in learning more about and something that that not everyone has much expertise on. So as I am not a full expert in social media, I'm not secretly an influencer in my free time, I'm excited to present this to you and hope this will be useful in your practice. I do not have any conflicts of interest to disclose. So objectives today. So today we're going to explore how you currently use social media. We're going to discuss the University of Pittsburgh and UPMC guidelines for social media use to make sure that we're aligning our activities with our employers' expectations. We're going to discuss creating a profile or account on social media, selecting a platform, and promoting yourself. And we're going to discuss the use of social media for medical education. Finally, as Sylvia mentioned, social media activities can be used for academic promotion. And so we're going to talk about how to optimize your social media use for that. So first, I was thinking we could kind of get an idea of the group. So I'm going to start this. It's starting early. There we go. So if you would go ahead and scan the QR code, or you can go to menti.com and use the code that's above, and let me know kind of what your social media use looks like. You can do this from home as well if you're on Zoom. And we'll give a few minutes and then keep it open because we'll have a couple additional questions. All right, so it looks like we actually have a good amount of people who have both a personal and professional account. A couple people holding back no social media account yet, and many of us have at least a personal account. And then also out of curiosity, what are some ways you use social media? So just from a free text standpoint, a word or two about things you do or how you currently use social media. All right. So we have um, some more social personal uses, celebrations, keeping in touch, taking a break. Um, we have recruitment I see up there. Um, waste time, zone out, never use it. So we can see that we're using it in many different ways. So some different ways kind of thinking through and sorting this into a couple different categories. So thinking about it in our personal life, our professional life, and then as a program. So personally, many of us use this for connection. People are using this to get information. A large proportion of the population uses social media to seek their news and to seek their information. Um, and so we're probably all using it in that way as well. From a professional standpoint, we can use it to amplify our research, to get our information out there. We can use it to perform research, to learn about our population. We can reach out to our patients that way, and promote outside projects, whether that's an advocacy project or something else that we're doing. And then from a program standpoint, we can use it for teaching and we can use it for recruiting. And whether we're using social media from a program standpoint or not, you bet our applicants for trainee positions, faculty positions are using social media to learn what they can about the program before they come and to speak to one another about what they think. So, as we're thinking about this, I kind of wanted to start with the guidelines from our employers. So this was another question that came out. What do they have to say? Like, am I going to get in trouble for this? How do I make sure that when I'm posting on social media, I'm following along and following the guidelines? So we'll kind of talk about that a little bit first to make sure we're all on the same page. So many of us as faculty or as trainees are employed by UPMC or UPP, and then also have a dual appointment in Pitt. So we're going to talk about both of those. And it was actually really interesting looking into this because they're two different entities. They have different goals, and they have different guidelines for social media. So from a UPMC standpoint, we can find the social media guidelines on the Infonet. Just type in social media policy and guidelines, but I'll go through a little bit here as to what they are. Um, they come down into these 5 categories. So the first thing that in the UPMC guidelines is that the information is presented in a professional manner. So I think we can all kind of understand what that would be. And they do expect people to maintain their professionalism. Now, interestingly, I guess kind of going back to this is kind of all social media. So you may have a personal account. Kind of important to keep in mind that that could be discoverable and could be associated back to you, kind of regardless of how you put your name in there. So I just kind of keep that in mind as you're posting. So from a professional standpoint, making sure the way we're communicating is professional. The second is privacy and confidentiality. Obviously, we work in the healthcare sector. Patient confidentiality is so important, as is HIPAA laws, and we do not want to violate that in our social media use. I think that as someone who's kind of grown up in social media and gone through training from when social media was new, when like Facebook first came out, and you needed a college email address to get on Facebook, all the way up to now where it's more prevalent. I think that some of this is becoming more clear over time, but I think we need to recall that if we're posting on social media something we might think is de-identified might be identifiable. So I work in the emergency department. If I said I took care of the cutest 5-year-old after a car accident today, and I'm so glad his leg feels better, but his mom was kind of nuts. If that's the same day, they could identify who that is, and that could kind of come back. So really being mindful about posting any sort of patient information without express consent, and being mindful that someone may find this along the way, and whether or not you would want your patient or their family interacting with that post. The third tenet is accuracy. So we all know that there is lots of information on social media, and some of it is true and some of it is not true. And if it's coming from an account that says Dr. Marin, UPMC, people may trust it in a different way than they would from someone else. So making sure that if you're presenting information, you're fact checking it and that it's accurate. Identity refers to how you would identify yourself in this. So if you are like a medical student, it would be inappropriate to identify yourself as a physician. If you're a pediatrician, it would be inappropriate to identify yourself as a surgeon. So making sure that if you're identifying yourself as a healthcare professional, you're doing that in an accurate way. And then the last thing they kind of noted was think before you post, which I think we can kind of all ascertain what that means. So making sure when you go to post, you're not posting something you may regret later. As far as things that are frowned upon or expected that staff will not do, so making statements regarding UPMC that are false or misleading or could negatively impact the organization, making reference to proprietary information, patients, or specific patient information, including pictures or videos. So that's something to be careful about. You may note in our UPMC policy that patients taking pictures of healthcare providers or in the healthcare setting are okay if everyone is consenting to it, but videos actually aren't at all. Even if I said, yeah, that's fine. You guys can take a picture of me repairing your 5-year-old's laceration. That's actually against the UPMC policy. So making sure that you're aligning with that. And then using any UPMC logo or trademarked item is against the UPMC policy. University of Pittsburgh guidelines. So I found it very interesting that these are a little bit different because UPMC really employs us as healthcare providers in the hospital setting, and University of Pittsburgh really employs us as academicians in that setting. And the University of Pittsburgh guidelines, of course, cover not only us in the School of Medicine, but also the history professors, the political science professors, people in all sorts of different fields. So the University of Pittsburgh guidelines mostly focus on free speech and the limitations of free speech. So obviously free speech as an individual is generally protected, but the speech that would interfere with your job duties would interfere with the work of the university is not protected. And then I would trust that that we would recognize that speech that's harassment or discrimination could subject you to disciplinary action. So those are pretty much the synopsis of the Pittsburgh guidelines. Again, I'll go back to this slide. On this University of Pittsburgh website, there is a section on policies and guidelines regarding free speech and social media. So if you are gonna go ahead and set up a profile or an account, it would be wise to look through those first. So a summary of the guidelines, really attending to professionalism, privacy from the UPMC standpoint, and recognizing the limitations of free speech from a PIT standpoint. I just got a notification that there was a hand raised. Says there, I don't know if there's a question. We're good. Okay, perfect. All right, so we've looked a little bit at how we use social media. You've reviewed the UPMC guidelines, and you are ready to create a presence on social media for yourself or for your program. So let's think a little bit about who you follow on social media, who you like to read posts from, and we'll kind of use that to start our discussion. Oh, we love glaucoma flecking. Maybe it's just him. maybe the field's wide open. All right. So we have glaucoma flecking, who does comedy. We've got the residents of CHP, who I guess I should be following. Some AAP, some people just their family. I love Dr. Beach Gem. She's a PEM doc in Florida. Great. So you can see there's all sorts of different folks that you follow. Oh, it's still going. I'll give it a second. And then we can all take a picture and then add people to our followings. Real Madrid. That sounds nice. All right. All right. So the first thing we want to think about when we're creating a social media presence is selecting our platform. And so I think it's a common misconception that that people who are popular or who are influencers online are influencers on every platform. If you look at most people who are popular on social media, there tends to be one platform that they focus their efforts on, tend to have a presence across other platforms, but kind of have one that they're focusing their energy on as opposed to spreading it out throughout. So we're going to think through several different things as we're selecting a platform. The first thing we're going to think about is our audience. So who are we trying to reach? So if we looked at the examples that you gave, some of those are very focused on healthcare providers. So Glaucoma Flecken's a comedian, really focuses on comedy that's relevant and funny to healthcare providers. We have some people who are doing more outreach and education to patients. We have people who are, the AAP has their own goals. With CHP residents, I'm assuming recruiting is a goal too. So you're going to look at the age demographics of the platforms that you're using and how you're going to reach those people you want to reach. You're probably going to be looking at different people if you're reaching our teenage patient population than if you're trying to reach parents of the teenagers or an older population. How do you want to format your information? So is your information best formatted in long written posts? Is yours best formatted in audio? Are you looking at more visual information and pictures? And are you looking at short form video? So those are some different forms or formats of information that maybe you maybe want to use. And then discoverability. So the term discoverability refers to how likely are people to find your account. So obviously you have friends and family you're going to spread it to, maybe colleagues, but how are people going to discover it? So currently, platforms like TikTok are going to have high discoverability because people are using them and going to different sources, but that's going to change over time, whatever the next platform is to come out. And then look at similar accounts and see what was successful. So the medfluencers we just discussed, you could look at what they have and see where they were successful and maybe model your account after theirs. So I pulled out some common platforms. There are like countless social media platforms. There's also, we'll talk a little bit later about things like blogs and podcasts and other forms of social media, but just want to go through some of these platforms and highlight different assets of each that are aspects of each that may make them a good choice or not a good choice for you. So Facebook is kind of the not the original social media, but kind of goes back, has a lot of popularity, has pretty wide reach. The demographics skew a little bit older for Facebook. So a little bit like later 20s and 30s, a little bit less adolescent age. With Facebook, there are a lot of nice features in selecting groups. So putting together a group page and communicating that way. There's also nice ways to filter down who you're targeting on Facebook. And then if you're creating a business, there's ways to create basically a free business page that has a lot of the same a lot of the same capabilities that a website would have. So that may be a nice choice for that. You're going to be able to write longer text. You're going to be able to insert links to further information. So it would be a nice choice if those were things you were looking for. For Instagram is very visual. So Instagram's mostly picture based. There's also Instagram Reels, which are going to be short videos. So if you have something that's very visual, Instagram's probably the choice. So in thinking through medical things, things like dermatology rashes are very visual. A lot of our like pages about, connecting and recruiting things that are happening in our residency include pictures of people out and about. So it can be visual in that way. Twitter or X is going to be the short form content. So there's character limits on there. You can only kind of write short snippets. Has a relatively wide reach. Tends to skew a little bit younger than Facebook. Tends to skew male, which is interesting. And Facebook tends to skew female. Um, and is very widely used. Um, Disadvantages are going to be that it's short form content. So if you're wanting to post paragraphs of information, Twitter is not going to be the place to do that. There's also obviously political turmoil right now over the owner of Twitter and popularity there. So that may be something to be mindful of when you're selecting a platform. I did have the experience as I was preparing for this talk, trying to gather some screenshots of things and finding some medical folks that had left Twitter over the last couple months for those reasons. Um, the other platforms like Blue Sky and things like that, which are an alternative, have not quite taken off to the extent that Twitter has as far as reach goes. LinkedIn is, I think, used a lot more professionally in our business and corporate colleagues. And I think a lot of folks that have like more leadership positions here are probably using LinkedIn more frequently. That allows you to put up your business credentials. You can actually apply for jobs through there, though I think that's less common in our medical colleagues, and can post job and work related things there. So it's very focused. Something like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, people may kind of mix the professional and personal. LinkedIn tends to be just the professional information. TikTok, I think everyone's heard about, is become very popular. Their form is short form videos. So it's a nice way to get out snippets of information in a format that fits with certainly my emergency medicine brain, because they can't last more than 2 or 3 minutes, and are widely discoverable. There's lots of TikTok trends, including songs or dances or things like that, question answering, that could increase your discoverability. And then finally on here, I have Doximity, which is not super widely used, though I think is becoming a little bit more active. There are some nice features on Doximity for people in private practice for like making phone calls and things like that. But it allows you to connect with persons in medicine. There's lots of medicine related information, articles, and interaction present on there. So those are some kind of common platforms I brought up as an example. There's obviously many others, but things to think about as you're selecting which platform. So creating a profile, creating an account, how do you do that? How do you start? You may have one that's personal and you may be kind of moving towards a professional one. And so we'll talk about how we put that together. So the first thing we're going to think about is our photo. So the photo for a profile or account should be something that's flattering, nice of you, but it should also tell a little bit of something about the account. So we're going to take 4 photos of the same individual, and we're going to talk about, if you saw this photo up, what you might think the profile would be. So we're going to look up in our top left. So if that popped up as a profile, kind of whatever username, what kind of content do you think you might be getting there? Baby boxing, yeah. So like maybe a fitness. Any other thoughts? Fitness, Disney, maybe Disney related, maybe an advocate for day pajamas, something along those lines. What about the second one? What are you thinking? Yeah, like a princess, maybe a fashion, something along those lines. We got the bottom left, maybe medical. So maybe if you're doing something medical, you may want to have something in your picture that indicates that. And then I thought the bottom left could be maybe a travel account, maybe a Pittsburgh centric account. We got the incline, we got the raincoat. We're looking very Yinzer. So thinking about those as you're building that. So if you have a really nice picture of yourself, that's great. But when that pops up, that might not tell people anything about your account. Next, looking at creating a bio. So this name actually didn't come up in our list of folks we follow. This is Dr. Rubin. He's an allergist based out of Illinois and is very popular on social media. So if you look at his profile, first we look at his picture. You can kind of hopefully see from the audience, he's got his bow tie on, which tends to be kind of like a trademark for him. I feel like kind of classic pediatrician look. And then has the stethoscope on so you can see. So when you see that picture, you think, okay, this guy is probably doing something in the pediatric medical realm. Next, using hashtags, keywords. So he has that he's an allergist. He has that he likes bow ties. He's got a hashtag for his squad and then links to other pages. So these things can all help increase discoverability and help people find you. Next, we're going to look at content. So, so when I was reading about this, there's not a lot of like evidence-based, like how to make your social media popular. So, really, are looking at kind of more or less like consensus statements. But obviously, you've got a cute picture, you've got a good bio. People are going to have to want to consume your content. So, so looking at the content, kind of the three tenets is you want it to be compelling, consistent, and encourage engagement. So compelling obviously is the first one. It's one word, but it is difficult to do. So thinking of topics that your audience, your target audience is going to want to hear about and making content that fits for them. Making content consistent. So if you have a page and you're posting once every month, once every 3 weeks, people are not necessarily going to see that. And so making that post come out at a particular clip, at a particular pace, so that they know when to expect it is important. You also don't want it to be posting content 15 times a day and have people unfollow you because you're interfering with their feed. And then the third tenet is encouraging engagement. So when you post something, the more likes, the more comments, the more engagement that your post gets, the higher that's going to go in the algorithm, and that's going to again increase your discoverability. So some ways to do this would be asking a question in your content. So maybe you're making a video about storing, maybe I'm making a video as Peds Emergency Medicine, storing medication safely. And I maybe do a video and talk about that. And then I say, hey, where do you store your medication? Or what's the craziest thing you got into as a toddler? And then that encourages your people who access your account to go in, to comment, to chat, and then again, engaging with them in the comments. So responding to their comments will help encourage engagement, and that'll all kind of raise you up in the algorithm. So again, in looking at this, again, not a lot of like kind of evidence-based, this is how you have a popular social media account, but a lot of kind of tips I found online and a couple rules that I looked up or looked at that seemed relatively consistent in amplifying your message. So one technique is called the 5-5-5 technique. So as you're building your social media presence, spending 5 minutes a day, following 5 people, and interacting with 5 other accounts. So that's kind of a way, if you are intending for your social media account to become more popular, to get the word out and increase your discoverability. The 70-20-10 rule is looking at what you're posting. So, and I would say there's as many of these kind of rules out there. So looking at ones that are more consistent, but I think the main point is kind of thinking about a balance. Am I doing all self-promotion? Am I doing all content? Am I doing all shares? And so this recommends about 70% of your content should be you adding value, you adding information to the conversation, 20% sharing other people's, and then 10% self-promotion. So if you have something that you're promoting for yourself, to keep that to about 10%. Along the same way, the rule of thirds is kind of a similar rule. So a third promotion, a third content adding value, and a third of your time spent interacting with other accounts. Some other ways to get your word out there, to get your account more visible, is something called content marketing. And so overall, the term content marketing refers to making people want to consume the content you're putting out. But there is ways to pay for content marketing. So if you have an account you're working on, you think your content's really compelling, and you just are really trying to get the word out, but a pediatrician from Pittsburgh, you don't know that many people. You can pay the social media company, so you would pay Instagram or Facebook or TikTok to put your content higher in the algorithm. And this can be a relatively small fee and can really kind of boost that discoverability. And also, in different accounts, you can do more targeted marketing. So in like Facebook, you could say, okay, I want you to boost this to 25-year-olds who have the word doctor in their profile. Maybe you're looking at recruiting residents. So that could be a way to do that. Paid advertisement is obviously, paying to put your content out there, and then collaborating. So if you have a colleague that is popular on social media for whatever reason, doing a collaboration with them, having them tag you may bring your discoverability up. So some key kind of takeaways from this. So our photos in our profile should indicate the key goals of your account. You can build your bios to increase your discoverability, and then the content should be compelling, consistent, and encourage engagement. And then really think hard about how you're going to amplify your message. I think a lot of times we think, oh, well, I'll just make this great stuff and then everyone will find it. But the people who are successful in social media, there is an aspect of luck, but there's also a lot of hustle behind it. And so thinking about that as you're building that. All right, so we now have our profile for that goal, and we're going to change a little bit and kind of talk about using social media for medical education. And so there is actually a little bit more evidence base and information out there on this. So we'll do this. May be the one last survey. So how do you use social media for your trainees? And I see many trainees in the room as well. So you could think about how the program uses this. All right. So this is great. So it looks like we are using our social media a lot for announcing things, for recognizing our colleagues, for recruiting, and for connecting. I think that's fantastic. We have a couple people that are using for content review, but not many. And so I think there's actually some opportunities for that we'll discuss. And then folks saying that their division doesn't really use social media at all for their trainees. So we're going to go through a couple different ways that we can use social media for our trainees, and talk about specifically podcasts. So see Dr. Terchichi here. So there's podcasting. I think we don't always think of as social media, but does really fall in that realm and can be really a great tool. Blogs, which are, again, I think people don't always think of that the same way as social media, but it can be a good education tool. We'll talk about tutorials, which are actually well described in the literature. And we'll look through what that is, because I had never heard of that. And then general outreach. So our podcast. So I'm a big podcast fan. I listen to some educational podcasts. I mostly focus on other podcasts that I enjoy listening to. But our trainees are busy people. They are working a lot of hours. They are probably, I remember being handed the Nelson's Pediatrics book on my first day of residency and being told that I should read the thing before I finished residency. I'm not gonna lie, I did not finish it. But it's hard to get home at the end of a long day or a long shift and crack open a textbook and read. So the podcast can be accessed when people are working out, driving home, doing housework, and can be a good way to do outreach. So we have that And then the different podcasts kind of focus on different things. So I want to talk to you about a couple examples and things you might find. So that's Pediatric podcast is the Children's Hospital podcast, is mostly geared towards healthcare professionals, but also I think could be accessed by the community to learn about pediatric topics. And focuses on that. The MRAP is a very popular emergency medicine podcast. So I'm PEM, so we work with a lot of EM residents and follows kind of monthly review with CME, and goes along that way. And a lot of our residents use that in board review. If you're looking for a way to get out safety information, or if you're sleeping too well at night, you could listen to the Med Mail Insider. So I actually use this for my safety CME for licensing. And so this goes through different malpractice cases that were won by the patient and kind of explain why. I see some of the faces out there, but was really interesting for me to just think through. And so you could, pick a topic along those lines that maybe is related to your field to create a podcast. AAP has their Pediatrics on Call, which again is geared towards pediatricians and learning. Our very own Sylvia Usu-Ansa was on there a couple months ago talking about her experience on the pit. And so appearing on those, consuming those can be a way to educate our residents, and of course using that information that's already out there. And then in the bottom, there's also going to be podcasts that are more focused towards patients. So this is a physician that makes podcasts for patients and children. So another way to think about how you could create a presence for yourself, reaching out either to other healthcare providers, other physicians, or reaching out to our community. Blogs are another great way to reach out to the community. So this is a PEM blog, which is out of Cincinnati and has been very well maintained for, over a decade now. Looks at different topics in pediatric emergency medicine. So this was within the last month or two, looking at repeat epinephrine. Also posts success stories. We have certain things at our conferences where people can enter contests for pictures. And so Brad Sobleski at Cincinnati posts things in there to keep people in touch. So you could think about having a blog related to your field that could spread that information. So tutorials. So what is this? This was actually mentioned in several pieces of literature that I discovered when I was researching this talk. So tutorials is a way to provide education and content via social media. And so again, we kind of noted that was an opportunity for our divisions in our survey earlier. So typically this is done in a series of numbered posts. Again, typically on X, which was formerly Twitter, could promote a specific project or idea. So you could have a specific learning topic, or you could use it to present maybe the research project that you just completed. You could use it to summarize a conference. So there were some, national conferences that were using this to summarize some key points. Often are case-based, which of course is all of our favorite way to learn, and allow interaction with other users. So I took a couple examples. These are from the neurology literature, a couple kind of notated examples. And so you can look at this here as kind of the first post from a tutorial for neuro. So includes some keywords, includes a unique hashtag so people can find it, and is very visual and graphic in the presentation. So if you were to start to do this, you may have an intro post like this that's kind of creative, catches people's attention, and then goes through what you want to teach. And then this next slide is just an example that shows what these actually look like. So they often involve like surveys or ways that folks can interact, and a question. So this actually is, I thought this was a really clever publication because they published their notes on how to make a tutorial in tutorial format. So I don't know, I thought that was really clever. And so you can kind of look through that. So this is another way to get that information out there. An advantage to this is that this could be accessed at any time. So that's great for residents because they can access it in the middle of the night if they're on a night shift where they're not getting slammed by admissions. They can access it when they're kind of dreary post call, or they can access it during the day, and they're able to interact and comment and ask questions and tag things. So it can be a really nice way to reach people where they are. Also, pediatrics is a small field, and our pediatric subspecialties are especially small. And so having something come out this way, you could reach folks in your subspecialty across the world, really, to interact and learn together. So I thought this was kind of a nice way to do that. Again, typically kind of has been published on Twitter, but would be doable on other platforms as well. Another kind of popular thing is these virtual journal clubs. So this is an example. We all are familiar with journal clubs. We generally, traditionally get together with people who are physically close to us to discuss a specific journal. But there's many ways that these are being done in the social media sphere, either through discussion groups or pages, or being done virtually. So again, another way to really connect with those folks with similar interests to us who may not be physically close to us. And then finally, I think this is the way it seems like a lot of our groups have used it. So sharing wins, updates, and events. This is our CHP PEM social media account on Instagram that's run by Dr. Jane Song. And because PEM is the coolest specialty, this is the field trip our fellows went on last month to FIPS, where they looked at poisonous plants. So a way to share that. And so this can be used to share things, to thank, they called out Dr. Schulman from toxicology for hosting us. And then, of course, as we're trying to recruit folks to come train at our institution, to come work at our institution, we can use these sites. All right, so you have an account, you've set up your bio, you're working on interaction, you've got your divisions using this for education. So how do we translate this into promotion? So I see a lot of trainees here. So academic promotion, once you guys get a faculty appointment, if you choose to be at an academic institution, you may desire to get promoted along the way. And in the promotion process, they're looking at many, many things on your application. And one of the things they're looking at is how many publications you have, how much are you disseminating your work. And a way that is translated from non-publication, so things that are not, typically you think of like a peer-reviewed article in a medical journal as being a publication. There's also something called publication equivalently scholarly projects, and those can be other activities that count. So recently we've become able to count social media for academic promotion, and count those as publication equivalent scholarly products. So we'll do, I lied. This is the last survey one. So I was curious how our group has used this, and what we know about this. Okay. So we really have a spread. So we have some people who have used this for their promotion, some people who haven't heard of it, and some people who didn't know it could be used. And then we have some people saying, what's promotion, which I feel you. I see the trainees. I'm like, I didn't even start thinking about this until several years into my faculty time. So for the UPMC School of Medicine, for a social media account, you can get this form, which I picture the top of that there, for social and digital media for faculty appointments. This form goes along with your promotion packet and is submitted together, and we'll talk about a little bit about highlights of this. So the very first tenet is that the scholarly work that you're doing has to fit your quote scholarship philosophy or your mission as a university of faculty. This could include your academic niche, who your intended audience is, the objective, and making sure it fits your career development plan. Couple kind of examples to think of this. So if I had a very popular baking account where I made cakes and I decorated them and I made all sorts of treats, and I had 1 million followers. That's great. That probably is not going to be used for my promotion packet. I'm pediatric emergency medicine. So if I had a TikTok account where I made videos about patient safety and keeping your kids safe, that would very clearly fit into my mission as university faculty. Kind of somewhere in between, I focus a lot on physician well-being, and that's one of my interests. So if I did have a baking blog that talked about, while I was doing that, talked about different techniques for promoting work-life balance or increasing professional fulfillment and discuss that, or fitting in cooking for people who are busy working physicians, that may more fit with my scholarship philosophy and could be used. So some of it's very clear cut. There may be some things in the middle. And then looking at measuring that and measuring the impact, we can measure it in reputation, in content, and in media appearances. And I'll go through each one of those. So the first way to measure it in reputation, or how popular your social media account is. And so there's two aspects of this in the School of Medicine. One is very easy to understand, one's a little bit more nebulous. So the first one is the Healthcare Social Graph Score. And so this is a requirement for your popularity to count towards promotion. This is, a score that's calculated using your handle on X. So it's actually only for that platform. And it looks not only at how many followers you have or how popular you are, but also looks at how you interact with other people who are identified as healthcare providers. It was not clear to me on their website, or kind of looking in exactly how the numbers add up, but it's a calculation that the website will perform. And then also in reputation, it's going to look at how many followers you have. So the calculation works for that. You need a healthcare graph score over 70 and 5,000 followers, and that would count as one publication equivalent scholarly product. And then for every 10,000 followers over that 5,000, you add a quarter PESP. So it's quite a few followers, but if you're looking at kind of making content to try to earn those PESPs or have that count, that would be how the calculation works there. The second place we're going to look at is content. So there are some requirements of digital content in order for it to count as scholarly work product. We're going to want the content to be publicly available, so it has to be somewhere where the public can reach it. Is going to provide one of these 5 services: so patient education, advocacy, epidemiology, research, or medical education. And then your role in the content has to be as the content creator, manager, administrator, or featured expert. So it would not be something that you just kind of participate in, but you really have to be behind it intellectually. And so how do these add up? So for video or audio, looking at 2 minutes long or greater than 2,500 views, so 10 of those is 1 PSP. For podcasts, it's like a 5-to-1 ratio in creating podcasts. For blogs, invited commentary, non-peer-reviewed articles, looking at number of words and number of views, it's 3-to-1. And then for those tutorials, either 500 plays or 50,000 impressions. So that would be, again, encouraging that interaction, would count as 1 PESP. So I kind of see, I see some eyes getting wide. These numbers are big. And, is another way to capture these. I was kind of pondering this and thinking about the work that goes into a peer-reviewed publication. An article that you get out is also pretty big, but these numbers are big. So this is probably an avenue for people who are really using this as a focus, who are really putting a lot of time and effort into their social media presence and their content creation, and having that count towards their professional, towards their promotion is a little bit less applicable to someone who's just using this very casually. And then finally is media appearances and interviews. So any subject matter interviews, it would be the ratio that they have on the form is 10 interviews to 1 PESP. So in conclusion, so use of social media can definitely enhance your professional life. There are specific guidelines that the university and UPMC has put forth for their employees. Um, and we obviously need to follow those to maintain our employment. Building a profile and engaging people is a skill set, so it's not something that just happens. It's something that if you want this to be part of your professional portfolio, needs to really be a focus. Um, we can use social media to enhance our medical education. And if you're doing social media activity and you're starting to create content, you can think about how that would count for your academic promotion. And I'd encourage you, if you have questions about it, to come to us in the OFD. We'd be happy to help you, and be happy to, if we don't have the answers, find the people who do to help you use that, because we know you guys are doing such fantastic work and we just really want you to get credit for it. Thank you guys so much.